Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 51 of the Dynasty Junkies podcast, a proud member of the Dynasty Addicts podcast network. I am your host, Rocky Petrella at Dynasty FF Addict. And this week, I'm joined by a familiar face here. It's been a little while, but as I mentioned last week, Scott's going to be on a little hiatus here, so I brought back a familiar face, and Dustin Church at Dynasty Junkie FF back co-hosting with me again. So Dustin, it's nice to. I mean, we're friends. We talk to each other, in between your appearances here. But it's really nice to be potting with you again. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here with you. And like when I left back, I don't remember when it was. I said I'd pop in every once in a while here and there. So I was able to make it work this week. So I'm excited to be here and talk with you. I love finding trades, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, that was right in my wheelhouse. So I'm just excited to be on and be talking with you. Thanks for having me.
Yep, I'm very glad you're here. And as Dustin alluded to, this is going to be an all find me a trade episode. We got 3 teams. We're going to be finding trades for 3 trades for each, with only 2 of us. I got some fellow DAP network members to kind of throw trades onto our show sheet here and give little explanations for what they were thinking. So we'll go through those as well as ones me and Dustin came up with for each team. And just before we move on, a couple things I did want to mention. One, I mean, we don't really do a news thing here, so you won't hear us talking about Julio and all that stuff. You're getting that on pretty much every other podcast. And if you want to hear our thoughts, you can actually listen to this past week's Trade Addicts. And I know Dustin and Brian talked about it on Fantasy Narrative, Dustin's new pod, which I'll let him plug again at the end of the show if he wants. But and the other thing was just to let everybody know that we're recording at a very weird time. And actually, we did go live, and I plan on going live every episode we do now. It's like 11:30 on a Wednesday at this point, 11:30 at night. So I doubt anybody's watching. Oh, there actually are a few people watching, but but anyway, going forward, it should be Thursdays at 9:30, pretty much every episode. I can tell you, I do have some great guests lined up for next week. I believe the week after that, I'm probably not going to be able to do a show, so we'll be off that week. And then I have another great guest at the end of the month, and then I'm hoping Scott may be back by then, but if not, I'll figure it out. But we definitely got everything lined up for the rest of the month. So if you're wondering how it's going to go, like I said, show next week, off the week after that, and then a show the following week, all of which will be live if you do want to watch on YouTube or Periscope. So I guess with that, we will get into the trades. So the first team was submitted by JC Thompson at JC is Online. Dustin, you want to give the settings, and then I will go into the roster, and I'll start with I guess each one after we do the roster, we'll start with the trade of the guy who's not here, so we can make fun of them, and then we'll move on to our trades. So you start with the settings, and then I'm going to pull up the roster right now, and I'll go into that when you finish up.
Yes. So this one, it's a 10-team PPR Superflex. It has no tight end premium. It's 6-point passing touchdowns, -2 for interception. 32-man rosters. He starts 9, quarterback, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, tight end, super flex, and 2 flex. Pretty standard starting lineup with the super flex added there. You have the roster up?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, Sleeper does not have it on their PC where I can look at them by position, so I have to scroll back and forth. Reason number 132, MFL is better than Sleeper, just saying. So at quarterback, he has Kyler, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Carson Wentz, and Cam Newton. Running backs, he's got Chubb, Swift, Najee Harris, Myles Gaskin, and then mostly roster filler after that. He does have Tony Pollard, who's not exactly roster filler. And then at wide receiver, he's got Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and Julio Jones, speak of the devil, and Josh Reynolds. And
Ayuk, Mims, Bateman.
And, yeah. De'Ami Brown, so a lot of young guys. And then at tight end, it's Kelsey and Ferkser and Harrison
Tanyan.
Bryant.
Yes,
And
Tanyan as
Tanyan
well.
and Frymouth. Yeah, like I said, sleepers all over the place with how they're listing these guys. I thought
And on sleeper, Tanyan is a wide receiver and a tight end.
that's
actually.
true. I know. I remember there was some other pod I was on. I remember I was like, why the hell is Tanyan listed as a wide receiver? Or why does he have wide receiver eligibility? It's ridiculous. But yeah, that's pretty much all the relevant guys. And he has pretty much no relevant 22 picks. He's got a third, fourth, and fifth. From what I'm seeing here. So we'll get right into the first trade, which was, like I said, I got some of our DAP network guys. This is from Bill McCarthy at Super Duper Flex. His trade was Wentz, Swift, Julio, or Ayuk to team K-Nun 2 for either Dak or Herbert. And he says I echo Rocky's point, which hasn't been made yet. But I had mentioned in my little write-up on the show sheet that with 10 teams and only 9 starters, you definitely want studs as many as you can get in your starting lineup. So that's what he says. And he says the second QB is where this team is lacking the most, in my opinion. The team with Dak and Herbert also has Mahomes, so they can afford to downgrade for an upgrade at running back and their choice of additional youth or points at wide receiver. And he also mentioned, according to the DLF trade analyzer, I guess he put this in there, this trade, they may be able to get something back, but I'm okay paying up for the stud QB without anything additional in return, which we know how I feel about that. So, Dustin, what do you think of this trade?
Yeah, it's interesting because my trade had the kind of same, actually had him trading away the same 3 players. I love getting Dak and Herbert. Now, I know how you feel about quarterbacks in Superflex, but in a 10-team league, like you want the studs. You're not relying as much on depth as you are on studs at those lineups. So I like getting stud quarterbacks. Those 2 quarterbacks are just really, really hard to buy right now. Everyone's high on Justin Herbert, and everyone's like super high on Dak because of what he did last year. Now he's healthy, and now he's back in Dallas. So there's not really any questions around Dak. So those 2 are really hard to get. And I don't really love giving up all 3 of those pieces and only getting Dak or Herbert back, because you're basically taking 3 starters to get 1. And yes, in a 10 team, you want studs, but like he doesn't have the studs behind those players to refill them. Like you went over his running backs. If you take Swift out of his running backs, he's starting Gaskin or Pollard. Like that's it. And like, so while yes, I think this team could upgrade it at quarterback 2, I don't think this is the deal to do that, because he's going to be gutting his lineup and not really fixing anything really.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Again, I definitely don't want to pay up for quarterback. Anybody who's listened to me for any amount of time knows that. And especially with Swift, I'm very high on Swift. And it's funny, too, because I was lower than him lower than most on him when he came out. But I've done a complete 180. I know they're not going to be good. I'm not worried about Jamal Williams, though. If they're not good, he'll catch a ton of passes, which will hopefully make up for any touchdown issues that he has. I don't expect him to get, 20 carries a game or something like that, but in PPR, he's going to make up for it elsewhere. And like you said, I mean, he actually does have Najee that he can plug into the running back spot also. But even still, there's like nothing after that. And like you said, I just don't think it's worth it to give three different starters. I don't mind knocking Julio off this team somehow with having both him and AJ Brown and Josh Reynolds for that matter. But I would rather. I don't want to move Swift for a quarterback. That's basically where I'm. I actually in a league I'm in moved a quarterback essentially, and league we're in together actually, Breaking Bad. I moved 102 for Swift, which that does have points per carry, which makes him a little more valuable. But I'm just super high on Swift. So thank you, Bill, for contributing the trade. But I do think it could definitely be accepted. I mean, like you said, it's hard to buy those guys, but he does have really good quarterbacks. If I was in his position, I'd be looking to move one of them, and this is not a bad package to get back. But I just don't think I'd want to do it for our team, basically, that we're looking for the trade for. So, Dustin, you want to go into yours?
Yeah, so mine was trading the same 3 players away, Wentz, Julio, Swift, and also a 2023 first. I would like it if you don't have to give the first, but I would be fine doing it, to Rabid Carrot for Lamar Jackson and Joe Mixon. I want to use the Julio news to try to move him. He already has AJ Brown and Josh Reynolds, so he's not going to be playing both of those. I'm not as high on Swift as everybody else, not just because they got Jamal Williams, and not just because now they're trying to get Gurley.
I was just going to say, it must be that you're worried about Todd Gurley.
No, I just that off like outside of Hawkinson on receivers, they don't really have anything. I don't trust that offense. They don't have a great line. Like I think that team is going to be going through a rebuilding phase, and I don't want a guy. And I love Swift as a talent, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to succeed with 8 in the box. And there's nobody at receiver there to help kind of stretch the field. And I think that their line isn't the best. That I think Hawk may be in blocking a little bit more than we would like. So I don't love Swift in his situation. I love his talent, not a situation. And I can't quit Mixon. I think Mixon taking the second half of the year off, and they did some upgrades to that line and that offense. I think this is finally going to be the year for Mixon to break out. I mean, we've been saying that for a couple of years. He's still only 24. I know you love Mixon too.
I am one of the biggest Mixon truthers, but I'm even starting to get tired of waiting for that breakout.
Yeah, so I'm just like, I don't see much of a difference between Swift and Mixon, at least for this year and maybe next year. But I like using the Julio news. Whenever there's a player moves teams, there's always a spike in their value, regardless if it's warranted or not. I don't know that going to Tennessee is really going to change Julio's value, but right now it's probably inflated a little bit. So I like using that to try to get Lamar Jackson. And people are a little down on Lamar based off last year, but I still love him as a talent. And I think getting Lamar to pair with Kyler and having 2 running quarterbacks, it's going to give him a very, very safe floor. And he's replacing Swift with Mixon in the lineup, so he's not really hurting his lineup, and he's upgrading his super flex spot right there. So I like trading Wentz, Swift, Julio, and adding a 2023 first or second if you have to get the deal done. And the other, making sense for the other owner, he already has Tannehill, so giving him the Tannehill Julio stack. Some people just buy into stacks, so you send him Julio to stack with Tannehill. It makes sense for his roster as well.
And looking at this, I don't think the value is too bad. Like I'm looking at it, I would think it would probably take something maybe like Wentz and Swift to get Lamar, and Julio and a first might be a little much for Joe Mixon, and maybe Wentz and Swift. I think Wentz and Swift should be enough for Lamar, but so it's not too far off. I think it's a little weighted on our guy's side, and I'm just, again, I think it comes down to our differences on the Swift value, or how we're valuing him. To me, you're giving up, you're upgrading and getting a stud in that QB2 spot, and we all had the same idea. Even I had put in a trade for a quarterback for this team to upgrade that QB2 spot, but I feel like you're giving up one stud to get another one. And I know you don't view Swift that way, and you're getting Mixon back who you think is close. So I see why you're doing it. I can't give up Swift and a first, and again, I don't feel like Joe Mixon is a stud at this point. So I think the value's good. I just don't love giving up Swift in the deal.
Yeah, I guess that is where we vary, but I think this team is good enough to make a decent run, and I like Lamar a lot more than I like Wentz, and I don't think, at least for 1 or 2 years, there's going to be much of a difference between Mixon and Wentz, or Mixon and Swift. And like right now the value is up on Swift. Like everyone in the community loves Swift right now. Owners love Swift right now, and the value is spiking a little bit on Julio. That you could probably do it without the first right now. Like you could probably do those 3 for 2 and maybe move that first to a second, or just the 3 for 2 and get it done. But I think the framework is there and makes sense. But I'm higher on Mixon than a lot of others are.
I guess my only other worry a little bit would be this guy. I mean, Tannehill's value's up, so he might feel more secure. He only has, and if it was me, I would be okay with it. But he'll have Wentz, Tannehill, and Winston is his third guy. So he might. I don't know how he'll feel about having instead of Lamar and Tannehill, Wentz and Tannehill, and he is pretty set at wide receiver. I mean, he's got Hill, Godwin, Cooper, A-Rob. At least all in his starting lineup. Like I said on Sleeper, it's hard to really go through the rosters, but it looks like he has a couple guys on his bench too. But anyway, so I think I would rather do something more like my trade, which is, and it's funny, we all traded Carson Wentz. We all tried to upgrade the QB2 spot. Mine's a little smaller than what the other two guys did. I went Wentz and Ayuk to Team J-Owen2114 for Joe Burrow. And like I said, a little bit of a shocker for me to try and upgrade at quarterback. It's not my usual MO for me or recommending for another team. But as we talked about, 10 teams, 9 starters. It's really his only really weak spot. I mean, he can put together a starting lineup with Chubb, Swift, Jefferson, A.J. Brown, Kelsey, Najee Harris, and like a Julio or a Gaskin besides the quarterbacks, but he has Kyler Murray and Carson Wentz in the QB2 slot. So Burrow is not a stud right now, but I definitely think we could see that happen this season. He's got Jamar Chase now. Like I said, and I am lower on most on Ayuk. I know he played well last year. I think a lot of it was a product of the injuries that were around him. He's going to have Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance as a rookie as his quarterback, and I'm not sure how well that's going to work out for the pass catchers. So I love using the value of Ayuk to try and upgrade elsewhere because I definitely think he's overvalued right now. So that's basically it. And I think the other I don't know if I wrote up what the other team has, but I know it made sense. He had needed some wide receiver help. I don't have his roster in front of me, but I thought he could use another young receiver, I believe is what I had here. So I think the value works out pretty well, especially if people are valuing Ayuk at that high end range that a lot of people are. What do you think of that one?
I think with that one, you have to find the right owner to be able to make that deal. Ayuk's a hard sell. Either people love him or hate him. There's not really a lot of in between on Ayuk. I actually think I would rather try to do Julio in this deal because he already has 3 Tennessee Titan wide receivers with Julio and AJ Brown, and I mean Reynolds is just a bench guy right now. But I would rather try doing it with Julio and using the news of Julio to try to get the deal done, and then you're splitting up your Titans. But I just don't know if it's enough to get Burrow. Like I think you might have to add another piece or like a pick or something like that. I just don't know how many people are moving off of Burrow with the weapons that they have there and how he did look last year for Wentz and Ayuk. Unless you're finding somebody that really loves Ayuk, then I don't know that it's enough to get the deal done. But I like the framework of the deal.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I actually, I think I did this on 2 of the trades because of values I was a little uncertain of. This one's more because of my Ayuk bias. I put it into DTC and the Dynasty Trade Analyzer, and I think one had it in favor of the Wentz side and one had it in favor of the Burrow side. So I figured, like you said, if you find that guy who values Ayuk the way the one calculator did, I think it makes sense. If not, it doesn't. And I did look it up while you were talking. The second guy that we'd be trading him to has Evans and Kupp. And then his third wide receiver is Mike Williams, I believe. I don't see another guy on this roster that's really any better. Nelson Aguilar, Sterling Shepard. Yeah, so there's not much there. So that's the other reason I was thinking that he could. And I'd be fine doing it with Julio, too. I just thought he would, most people would value Ayuk over Julio at this point. But maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know. So I think that finishes up that one. Good talk on that team. Hopefully we helped you, JC. So we'll move on to team 2. And this one is submitted by Kelly Poor at KP Poker KP, is a frequent Twitter follower of the Trade X Pod who submits a ton of questions. That I know for the longest time Russ had trouble saying his handle, KP Poker KP. So I will go into the settings this time, and then I'm going to make you go run down the roster. So this one is a 12 team with tiered PPR. It's 1 point per reception for running backs, 1.25 for wide receivers. It's a little unusual, and 1.5 for tight ends. Superflex league. It's also a 2 tight end league. There's also 0.1 points per carry and 0.1 points per completion. 30-man rosters. Plus a taxi, and it's start 10 this time. QB, basically 2 of everything. QB and super flex, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 2 tight end, 2 flex. And he says that he had some bad injury luck last year, thinks it might be a pretty good squad this year. He'd love to make a push this year or next. So if you have it up, why don't you get into the roster?
So at quarterback, he has Mahomes, and then he has Dak, and then Watson as his third. So he's stacked at quarterback with Mahomes, Watson, and Dak. Like you're set. Running back, he's got Kareem Hunt, Najee Harris, and then he's got Zach Moss, Rashad Penny, Tony Pollard, James Robinson. So not a lot there outside of his top 2. And then at wide receiver, he's got Juju, McLaurin, Debo, Tyler Boyd. Then he has, let's see, Kedrick Bourne.
If you hear us, I was just going to say, if you hear us stumbling over rosters, it's because it's much easier to read it off of an NFL screen than it is off of a sleeper screen. So bear with us here.
Then he's got like Rashad Perryman, N'Keal Harry. So not a lot outside his top starters. Not a lot of depth there. At tight end, he has Kittle and Gronk, and then he has, make it down, Jimmy Graham is his third tight end. So not a lot of tight end. They're outside the top 2. I mean, Jimmy Graham's a serviceable in a 2 tight end league. Jimmy Graham is your third. Is fine, but I think it's Cole Kmet year. That's a whole other topic. Anyways, so our first trade was submitted by our boy Josh at Real Fantasy TL. He's over on the fantasy timeline. But he wants to trade his 2 2022 firsts and then add Tyler Boyd if you need to team Cody Petey for David Montgomery and Allen Robinson. His notes were David Montgomery is a good running back too, and Allen Robinson always seems to be undervalued, even though he almost always ends up as a wide receiver 1, and Fields will be the best QB he's ever played with. So I'll give my thoughts really quick, and then I'll kick it over to you, Rocky. I love this trade if he can pull this trade. And I think he would have to add Boyd. Boyd might be a hard add because everyone sees them just drafting Jamar Chase and they have T. Higgins there. So logical sense says that Boyd is the odd man out, but I still somewhat like Boyd. But I think he would have to add Boyd or another piece to get the deal done. But if he can pull Allen Robinson and David Montgomery, then I love this trade for him. I'm a big Allen Robinson fan, always have been. So I think it might be a little light with so if instead of Boyd, I would go Samuel or a second or something like that. But I love the framework of the deal. What do you think?
I'm mostly with you there. I don't feel it needs the add on as much as you do. I think. I mean, Allen Robinson is definitely worth more than a first, but I don't think he's worth 2. And I guess David Montgomery may be worth a late in first. I'd rather pay a high second for him, but I guess the person selling him is going to probably value him at a late first. So maybe they do need an ad. I would prefer an even smaller ad than Boyd, which I think is what you were saying. That or I'm not sure. Were you saying Curtis Samuel was more than Boyd or less than Boyd?
No, I was saying Debo Samuel.
Okay.
Instead of Boyd, not in addition to Boyd. So the 2 first and Debo Samuel or Tyler Boyd, either one, whichever one he was the other owner would like. I would do either of the 2 for him as the additional piece. I'm not as high on Debo. I'm just kind of out on both the San Francisco wide receivers right now until I just don't know what that team is going to look like. So to me, moving on from Debo, it doesn't make that much of a difference if I'm getting Allen Robinson.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I think I might even rather give Debo, and some people might value him over Boyd. And as we'll see, I'm going to kind of transition well into my trade, which I'm going to get into in a second. I also included Debo, so I guess you might have to. I still feel 222 first is pretty close to those two guys. Like I said, I don't think I don't want to pay a first for Montgomery, even though, as you'll see, in another trade, I do trade for David Montgomery, but I would rather not pay what I equate to a first, which is why we'd have to add on here. But overall, I agree with you. It's a very good trade. I would rather do it with the smaller pieces all. But if you have to do it Boyd or Debo, I'm probably okay with that too. And we'll go right into my trade because it's the same team, and I'm just going to mention too in regards to Josh's trade that this team Cody Petey, and I mentioned it in my trade right up here that if he's not rebuilding, he probably should be. He basically only has two as a sure thing at QB. I think he has Cam Newton and Winston as other two guys. He has some other youth and two first, so he may be starting a rebuild. So I think it makes sense from that perspective too. Josh's trade does because he's giving them the two firsts, and Debo might make more sense. I mean, not that Boyd is old, but I think Debo's a year or two younger even. So, but my trade was a little different here. It was Watson, Debo, and I was thinking either a second or 2 seconds, whatever it takes. You might have to go to a first. I don't know. It depends on how people are valued. I feel like, and you mentioned this in your trade, I think that Watson's value is rebounding, or it might have been in another trade. Watson's value is rebounding a little. And there has been some talk of a settlement. I think there's been rumors coming out of where he might go now that teams are still interested in him and all that. So I think his value is already starting to come back up, even without knowing how much he's going to play this year. But he has Mahomes and Dak and Watson, and I didn't want to. This was a tough one for me to do to begin with because he's got some elite pieces, he's got some youth, but I don't know that it's a great team. I don't love the idea of selling Watson until he fully rebounds, but he has Mahomes and Dak. So, and this was kind of the best piece I could see to give up without hurting the rest of his team too much. I didn't want to move most of his other pieces as well. So, what I did was the Watson, Debo, and again, some combination of picks. I put 22 second or two. That's what I'd start with the second, upgrade to 2 seconds, and maybe even go to a first if I had to. And I am also having him get back Allen Robinson, as well as Galladay and Winston. I just figured I like getting the two wide receivers. He could use running back depth, but I just didn't really find a good match to get him some. But he definitely needs more at wide receiver, and it gives him a cheap replacement third QB while giving up when he's giving up Watson, because I'm not really caring that much who my third QB is if I have Mahomes and Dak. They're starting every week anyway. So and as you said, Debo, I don't really care about that much either. I'm also kind of out on both San Francisco wide receivers, but hopefully the other guy sees him as a young upside guy. He gets the picks back. He gets Watson, who I think is a good target for a rebuilding team who can get him maybe a little cheaper still than normal. And if he doesn't play this year, who cares? Like I said, I think this guy should be rebuilding if he's not. He has, like I said, Tua and CeeDee Lamb and a couple other guys, and pretty much nothing else. Montgomery's probably his best running back. So that's where I went with that one. What do you think before we move on to your trade?
Yeah, I actually love this trade, especially since our owner isn't having to give up his 2 firsts as well in this deal. Both Josh's trade and my trade have him giving away his first, but it was smart to use his 3 quarterbacks. Like, you don't need, if you have Dak and Mahomes, you don't need a stud as your third. And so I'm not sure how he got all 3. Like, that's pretty impressive with the roster he has. But using Watson and going for a target like Winston is huge, because right now he's not a starter. I think he probably will be. but some people out there don't think that. So using Watson, and people are still pretty high on Debo as well. So, and people are somewhat down on Galladay. So I think like you're trading Debo, who people are high on, Watson, who is still a stud quarterback, just with some question marks right now, for a rebuilding team where I don't think there's any way that Watson misses more than a year. I think that's max. So I think the framework is really good, and I think this actually has a pretty good chance of getting accepted. It's just if that other owner knows that he's rebuilding, and if not, talking him into pushing him in that path, And sometimes that's what it takes, is just making that owner aware of kind of where they're at on their team. Like, hey, like this is where you're at. I'm helping you pick a direction right now. Like,
right. Like
we've talked about with our buddy Outhouse, like the worst place to be is in the middle. Like,
exactly.
So if you're in the middle, then pick a direction. And this guy doesn't have enough to go up, so he might as well go down.
Yeah, he definitely doesn't have enough to go up. And I was again I was looking at our Kelly's team again, and again, I think I really wanted to try and hold on. Like I said, I'd be willing to move one in this deal if I absolutely had to. But I like the idea of I still think he could be a year away. I mean, he has some really good pieces. I think A-Rob and Galladay, if he's able to get them, helps a lot for this year. So it kind of helps you, this year, maybe make a push if everything goes right. And if not, hopefully you don't have to give up either first. You still got those 2 firsts. And I think he could really be a powerhouse beyond just the quarterbacks and Kittle when he adds those as well. So, yeah, that's where I was at with it. So why don't you get into yours on this one?
Yeah, so my trade is trading with Wolverine 1. Wolverine 1, I don't think is a good team in the league. It's very top heavy and then nothing. So I have trading both of his firsts and both of his seconds to Wolverine 1 for Michael Thomas and Aaron Jones. Wolverine 1, like I said, it's not a great team, and he has no first round picks next year. And both Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas have some question marks going into this year with who's the quarterback going to be with New Orleans, and then is Aaron Jones going to have Aaron Rodgers, and kind of what's that looking like? So I want to use this opportunity to try to buy the dip and set him up for this year. And, I'm fine. I don't know if the 2 firsts and 2 seconds is going to get done, but, I like adding an upside guy like McCole Hardman, N'Keal Harry, Tony Pollard, maybe to get the deal done. Hardman is looking like he's going to be the number 2 right now in Kansas City. So adding his name on there and selling him on McCole Hardman could help get that deal done. But I think our owner is a little wide receiver. That's where I think he really needs to make his upgrade. And I think he could use another running back. So getting Aaron Jones and Michael Thomas is good for him. And the other owner, Wolverine 1, has Alvin Kamara. So, with the quarterback questions in New Orleans, he might not want to bank on two pass catchers in that offense with Kamara and Michael Thomas. So that's why I went after those targets. What do you think?
Yeah, I like this one a lot. I think you might even be able to get it done without giving all 4 picks. I'm maybe not, but Michael Thomas's value is down. You kind of said, and Aaron Jones is not down, but he's not super highly valued. I'm wondering if maybe you can even get it done for 2 firsts and a second or something like that. But I think even as is, it's certainly fine. And the other team, it's not even just that he's top heavy. He's also very old, especially by non-Rocky standards.
In the super flex league, he has Tannehill and Darnold. That's it. And then he has Kamara,
after
Aaron Jones, and then Connor, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell, and J.D. McKissick. And then he has Michael Thomas, Julio, and then AJ Green. Marvin Jones. That's it. And then in a 2 tight end league, in a 2 tight end league, he's got Gesicki and Doyle. That's it. So he has nowhere. He doesn't have anything. He doesn't have future. He doesn't have any firsts. he has 1 second and a fourth, so he has no picks. So him getting the 4 picks, people he might be looking at a team like, oh, I got Julio, Michael Thomas, and Kamara and Aaron Jones, and like I can make it happen, but like he can't. Like that's
the only thing is if he thinks that just because he has some of those guys, but this is just exactly like the other team. If he should be rebuilding. I mean, this is a team that's going to be, because of some of those guys we said, just good enough to be in the middle, and he has no picks, and it just makes too much sense this trade. I really like all three. Obviously like my trade. I really like both yours and Josh's trade as well. I think all of these ones are really good, and I think all of them have a chance in some form to be accepted as well, as long as these other teams realize my team is not good enough.
Yeah, and I think like with my owner going with Wolverine, if he can talk him into giving up those 2 players, might as well try to get Julio in the deal somehow as well. Like, give your 3rds and 4ths in McCole Hardman or something like that. Like, just like sweeten it a little bit to get Julio added, and just get Julio, Michael Thomas, and Aaron Jones from him. Like, if he's gonna push to the rebuild, like take Julio and just get another guy in your lineup. Just get another depth piece. Like, I like that, or send Boyd or something like that for Julio or something. There's a couple of different ways you can make that work. So if you're going for those 2. Get Julio get Julio added as well.
Yeah, and like I said, I was trying to hold on to picks because I don't know how for sure how much he'll compete this year. But I mean, he has those 2 stud quarterbacks. He has Kittle, and if he gets those 2 or 3 guys, I definitely think he could go in this year. I was just kind of going the other way with it, where I was making a little bit of a different move and trying to hold on to at least one of those first. But if you're going that much in and getting that high quality talent back, I definitely think he could be a legit contender. As you said, receiver is definitely a bit of a need, and he would really upgrade there with Thomas. And if you could get Julio, that would make it even better. So, yeah, good trades all around for that one. So, nobody to make fun of that time. So we'll move on to team 3 and finish up here. This was submitted by Corey Deaton at Dynasty Eeyore. So you can give the settings here, and then I will run down the roster.
Yeah, so it's a 12-team, 1 quarterback, 0.5 PPR, no tight end premium. It's a 0.1 points per carry, 0.1 points per completion.
Which, by the way, two of the leagues had these same 2 settings. Is this a default with Sleeper or something? And if so, it's another reason Sleeper is stupid.
I mean, I've had some leagues in Sleeper in the past, and I've never seen 0.1 points per completion. So it's just, I think
very
it's just
odd.
a coincidence.
And the other one had 0.1 points per carry too. I thought maybe it was a Sleeper default thing or something, but okay.
And this one's a 30-man roster, 4 taxi, start 9. Quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a tight end, and 2 flex. So you're a pretty standard league. So why don't you go ahead and get in the roster? You're muted, Rocky.
Bear with me here. I got it up now. Sorry about that. Yeah, he's got Russell Wilson and Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff. I remember this is a 1 quarterback league, so that's not as great as it sounds. He's got Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins at running back, and not really too much beyond that I'm seeing. Some like late rookie types, Salvon Ahmed, James White, Rashad Penny. And then at wide receiver, he's got A.J. Brown, Charles Claypool, Devontae Parker, Curtis Samuel, Tyler Boyd, Jalen Waddle, Henry Ruggs are the main names. Quintus Cephas is also there. And then at tight end, he's got Darren Waller, Jonnu, and Brevin Jordan. And he has, I'd just like to mention this, 2 first-round picks as well for 2022, if we choose to use them in the trade. So, Dustin, you want to give Justin's trade here?
Yeah, this is another interesting one because I think all 3 of us have one of the players being moved. But Justin has Waller, A.J. Brown, and a 22 third to Roto Librarian for Austin Eckler, DJ Moore, Evan Ingram, and Corey Davis. Justin put, without the tight end premium, he's good with moving Waller for a lesser tight end like Ingram. Getting depth at wide receiver and adding an RB is a no-brainer for a team looking at Devontae Parker in the starting lineup. On the flip side, the other team might accept because it does give them a couple studs on a team where they have the depth to overcome the loss of 2 extra players. I don't know how I feel about this trade. I like AJ Brown as the best piece on either side of the deal, and you're giving up the best tight end in the deal. And I know it's not a tight end premium, but he was still pretty solid in the league regardless, just because of how many receptions he had. But you're getting, and I don't think Corey Davis is really a starter. I think Corey Davis is the part of this trade I don't really like. I don't know what that New York pass catching situation is going to look like. But you still have Mims there, you have Elijah Moore there, and Zach Wilson as a rookie coming in. Running back to really take pressure off the team. Like, I just don't know what that team's going to look like. So I don't like relying on Corey Davis. So I don't think that Corey Davis is going to be any better than Devontae Parker. So I don't think Davis is replacing Parker. So you're downgrading from AJ Brown to DJ Moore, downgrading from Waller to Evan Ingram, but you're getting Eckler. And so I like getting Eckler. So like, it's pretty decent on paper, but I think I want to hold the AJ Brown side or get a different piece besides Corey Davis to maybe make it work. What do you think, Rocky? I'm kind of torn on it. Like, it looks good, but I don't know how much I love Ingram. Yeah,
I'm just gonna say I know you're saying torn. I think I'm even less than torn. I prefer the side that Justin's having the guy give up here in this trade. Like, I'm looking at it, even in a non-tight end premium. I think I would need a pretty hefty plus to give up Waller for Evan Ingram. So you're talking something like, if we're looking at the trade, Evan Ingram and Eckler maybe equals Waller. I'm not even sure of that. In which case I'm giving up AJB for DJ Moore and Corey Davis, plus I'm throwing in a third. I think he's giving up too much. And I also, when we get into my trade, I don't know that this guy, I want to keep this guy younger. I'm not an ageist, but I think he's about a year away from real contention, regardless of almost what he does. So I would, although I kind of split the middle with that too as well. But I like giving up Waller. I think we all give up Waller in our deals because it's non-tight end premium and he's a name. Evan Ingram, I'm kind of out on. Eckler's an older running back, and yeah, I would rather, and I don't want to give up AJ Brown. I really like having AJ Brown to build this team around, and I think it could be really good next year if he keeps some of these younger pieces. I'll get right into my trade since I talked about it already.
Well, I was going to say, like, one last comment on Justin's, like, you sending AJ Brown and Waller to this other team that's already pretty stacked, you're just going to make that team even better. Like, their team is good enough to, like, they have Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Cam Akers, and Antonio Gibson. Like, they can take the hit of Eckler, and, like, you're giving them 2 for sure starters for guys that are on his bench. And, like, that team already looks like a contender to me, that I think you're just going to set them over the top. Like, you're making a stronger team stronger because they have more depth. And that's kind of not what you really want to do. So I'm even
okay with that if he's doing that with the idea that he's not going to contend this year. But I think with the guys you're getting back, if you're getting Corey Davis and you're getting Austin Eckler back, it's more of a trying to contend move. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think that's a very good point you just made. But like I said, let me get into mine real quick. Because like I said, mine's kind of weird because I sort of split the middle, though, even though I kept saying that I don't know this guy can contend this year. And the reason I say that is that, like I said, he's got a lot of good young pieces. So I didn't want to give up too much, do anything too drastic, and I definitely want to hold his 2 first because I think, again, sort of like that other team, I think the first team had 2 firsts, and I think could really make them more of a powerhouse next year. Like I said, all 3 of us traded Waller in our trades because of the no premium, but he's a big name, and it's still a big piece for a contender, even a non-tight end premium league. I always like to have a high-end tight end because I still think it gives you a positional advantage, even with no premium. And so I like the idea of using him to trade down, pick up some value, and I just trade down to another tight end with mine. Hawk, this is to Dynasty Phoenix. It's Darren Waller and Tyler Boyd to Dynasty Phoenix for Hawk and David Montgomery. And Hawk is just one of my guys this offseason. I think he's jumping into that Waller, Kittle tier. Maybe even Kelsey if Kelsey falls off this year some. I don't know if I have to include Kyle Pitts in that tier now, but given the hype around them. But I just think, he's going to produce. It's the year 3. He made a huge step year 2. He's going to be there's almost certainly, if he stays healthy, going to be the lead target guy there, which is what you want from a tight end if they're going to, to get to that elite level. So he's one of my guys. And so I'm sort of looking to retool this team. I don't want to rebuild it. So I threw Montgomery in there because he did mention he wants RB depth, and he does need RB depth if he is contending. But like I said, I don't think he's a real contender, but you can sort of split the middle. You maybe with Hawk if he makes that jump, and David Montgomery helps. And David Montgomery's not old. This is his 3rd year in the league. So if you can, with those 2 firsts, sort of make a jump next year, Montgomery can still be part of when you're contending, because I think he could contend, like real contend, as soon as 2022. I'm not sure this is enough to do it, but I also think too that he, with some of the pieces he has, I think there's a decent chance he's going to be kind of in playoff contention anyway. So, and I don't want him to blow it up either. So what the hell? Throw in David Montgomery. Maybe he helps the playoff run. If not, maybe you flip him in season if he plays, somewhere near where he was last year. If he's a low-end RB1 at some point, you can flip him. So, and for Dynasty Phoenix, he's definitely closer to contention. He has like Swift, Sanders, I think Mixon. So Montgomery's like his RB4. And he's got 3 decent starting wide receivers. I know his roster up in front of me. It was like Deontay and another guy, a couple other decent guys, but not much after that. So Boyd would give him some nice depth. And the upgrade to Waller definitely fits more with his team. Like I said, I think it's definitely more ready to contend than our team is. So that's where I went with it. I think he might like the tight end upgrade, might like the wide receiver depth, and losing Montgomery is not much for him. And as long as he doesn't value Hawk the way I do, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and that was going to be my comment. Is I'm right there with you on Hawk, and I think a lot of the community is shifting that way on Hawk. So like you need to find that owner that doesn't believe that much in Hawk. But Waller,
I was just going to say, for what it's worth, he is about 2 plus a little over 2 rounds, I think, difference in ADP, which I know isn't tight end premium on DLF. But given we're talking between positions rather than overall in the whole draft, I still think that's kind of significant. So, I mean, again, it depends. I don't view them as 2 rounds apart, but a lot of people do.
Yeah. And like, I love Hawk, but I still think this is a good trade. Like, and we'll get into mine in a minute. Like, I love the downgrade from Waller in a non-tight end premium, especially in a 0.5 PPR. Like, Waller is a PPR guy, but in a 0.5 PPR league, like his value is decreased even more a little bit. And so I love moving on from Waller. That's why we all had that on there. I love getting Hawk. I think Hawk is going to be the wide receiver 1 on that team. They don't really have any other receivers there. And people still aren't fully in on Montgomery. So I like buying him. He's a good depth piece. And because I'm right there with you on this owner, I don't think that he's a contender. I wanted to make a couple comments. Like he was in the process of rebuilding last year, and then he traded Kittle, Sutton, Ayuk, and a second for Waller and Adams. which I don't really like that
I did
trade
not
for him.
like that really either. Yeah.
And then he turned around and flipped Adams for Claypool and Jacobs, and I don't think he got enough back for Adams. So like I think like he had an opportunity to be a contender, and then he's kind of made some questionable moves along the way that I don't think that I don't know that he's right there contending. Like he's like we talked about earlier in the show, he's kind of middle of the pack, and that's the worst place you want to be. You want to pick away, but I don't want him to move his pick. So I like your retooling to get a little bit younger, and mine's the same. So I'm gonna get into mine. So mine isn't as big as yours and Justin's, but mine is just trading Waller to Bud Therm for Jerry Jeudy and Noah Fant. I love Jeudy. There's been a lot of positive camps reports about him out of camp. He flashed last year, but people still aren't fully in on him yet because of the quarterback situation there. I do think that it's not a 50-50 chance, but a pretty decent chance that they get Rodgers or Watson and get that quarterback situation figured out. And at that point, both Fant and Jeudy are going to have some increased value coming with that. I know you're taking on two Broncos right here, but it doesn't scare me, especially in a non-tight end premium. Like I'm fine downgrading all the way from Waller to Fant if it's going to get me Jeudy. Like I love Waller, but I didn't go too big for it because I know like, it's a non-tight end premium, so it could be a league like where they just don't value Waller as much because it's a non-tight end premium. So I don't know that you're going to necessarily get someone to pay a lot for him because like I remember my non-tight end premium leagues, I just punted the position basically. Like I just got a guy. So, that's why I didn't go too big getting Jeudy and Fant in this league. Jeudy in year two, I love Jeudy, and I think you're still getting two playmakers there. So what do you think?
Yeah, I actually like this one too. I kind of I'm not a fan of having two guys from the same team, but I mean if they're good players, it's worth doing. And I mean with that team, it worries me a little if they don't get Aaron Rodgers, that Drew Lock's going to be throwing to them. But overall, I really like the trade. I mean, I like Jeudy as a player, I like Fant as a player. And like you said, you might not be able to get it as much for Waller in a non-tight end premium league. And looking at it, I mean, this guy has the other guy has a bunch of receivers. He's got Adams and McLaurin, and he drafted Devontae Smith, and he's got some other guys as well. And I guess the only thing is it worries me a little is he also has a bunch of tight ends. So none of them are on obviously Waller's level though, but he has Goddard and Logan Thomas as well. So maybe he's just playing the I'll have a bunch of guys and mix and match kind of game. But I also think this guy's probably a little closer to contention than our team is. He's got some iffy running backs too though, but I think the value's fine for a one tight end league, and I think that said, especially if this guy's like me who likes the elite tight ends, I would pay probably Jeudy and Fant to get Waller if I think I can contend. So I think it's a deal that could get done.
And that's the thing, like for our owner, like I don't think he's really that close to contention. So this gets him younger and gets him an extra piece without having to mortgage any of his future. Like he's keeping his picks, and he's getting younger at the position, and he's getting a young. I think Judy's 22, so he's getting a young receiver that's still got a lot of potential. Like even if they don't get Rodgers or Watson this year, like. I don't think there's any way they go into next year when the cap goes back up with Locke and Bridgewater. They're going to get somebody next year. So I like getting them a year early and I don't think it's going to hurt his lineup really that much. And I see Jerry Bagshaw in the comments. I do think that if the Texans make Watson available, that the Broncos will make a push. I think they're just kind of waiting to see kind of how the legal stuff plays out. But I've been seeing some rumors that it's getting close to being settled out of court. And if that's the case, then I think that we'll see some news coming from him in the next 3-4 weeks, if that's settled, on kind of what his future is going to look like.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And just Dustin's referring, Jerry Bagshaw's in the chat. Even after midnight here on a Wednesday, we have somebody in the chat asking if the Broncos will make a push for Watson. And man, that's what we're hearing, I think. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I will say too, for if anybody is not aware, there's definitely been talk around here. I'm in Philly that the Eagles have been sniffing around Watson as well. So just be careful of all your Jalen Hurts shares if this gets cleared up before the season starts, because that they have the ammo to go and get him. Although I guess they could include Hurts in the trade, and he could be the Texans starting quarterback. So I guess you'd still maybe have a starter, but and it's not like the Eagles' weapons are that great either. So maybe it's not even that much of a downgrade. I don't know. But anyway, I think that they definitely will. I think they're pushing for Rodgers. I think they're pushing for Watson. I think they would definitely rather not start Locke or Bridgewater this year. So we'll see how it goes. But I definitely like that trade a lot. And like I said, I think it's something that could get done. The value's pretty fair for a non-premium league. So I didn't get to make fun of your trades too much. So I'm very upset about that, Dustin. You did too well this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting for you to get a trade accepted from this. I think I have, so I haven't seen you yet. But no, most of the trades today kind of were along the same lines. Like our the teams that submitted made it pretty easy for us to kind of align. So yeah.
Okay, so that's our last team. So we're just about done here. I want to thank Dustin again for coming on and hosting with me again, just like old times. I really enjoyed it. So Dustin, why don't you just remind everyone of your Twitter handle and plug your new pod?
Yeah, so I'm Dustin at Dynasty Junkie FF on Twitter. Just started a new pod with Brian Har FF. You guys probably seen Brian. He was on Trade Addicts a while ago. He was on Superflex Super Show for a while, but we just started a show called The Fantasy Narrative at FNTSY Narrative on Twitter. It's a kind of a different show. We're excited about it. We just talk about different narratives that are going around the industry, both player values or non-player values, just kind of taking on the narratives and discussing our thoughts on that. So definitely come check us out. We're only 3 episodes in. So still pretty new, but definitely come check us out and let us know what you think. Rocky, it's always fun podding with you. We'll get you on there at sometime soon, and you can debunk or talk about some narratives with us. But thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, definitely. I love that, and I want to get on before Russ, because Russ always wants to be the first person on everybody's new pod. So
he hasn't asked it. You're the only one that's asked so far. So
I'll definitely come on if you guys will have me. I know you're still early on here, and you're kind of working the chemistry and getting a feel for everything. So, but when you're ready for guests, I'm coming on, whether you like it or not.
Definitely, of course.
Okay, so let me just finish up with our stuff. Again, I am at Dynasty FF Addict. You can follow the pod at Dynasty Junkies. I just went over 1,000 followers recently, so I want to thank everybody out there for that. You can follow the DAP Network at DAP_network and get alerts for when we go live, when Fantasy Timeline goes live. They're both under the DAP Network banner. They'll show up under the DAP Network Twitter handle. So definitely want to do that. And also subscribe to the DAP Network on YouTube and in podcast form. And also subscribe to Dynasty Junkies in podcast form. So I think that's pretty much it. Oh, and I guess I should say, because everybody says it, to give us a rating and review. I like the Outhouse has said, I know that helps us somehow, but I'm not quite sure how. So go and do it. Plus, I enjoy seeing it whenever we get a positive review. So I think that pretty much finishes up for this week. Like I said, we will be live again next week. I got 2 great guests coming on with me. And until then, Dustin.
Junkies out.